Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive, the podcast that skips small talk and goes straight for the concepts that shape our thinking and behavior. In this podcast, cold expertise is defenestrated as warm philosophy is enthroned in an attempt to explore the field in which we're all scientists looking for answers, living well. Hello world, welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive with Eyal Shai. I'm joined today by Simon Ohler. Hi Simon.
Hi, yeah, nice to see you. I think the other people don't see you, but I see you, so that's nice. And
Yes.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to it a lot. And, I invited you here today and we met briefly in both public space and a little bit before this podcast. And we decided to talk about a concept which you came up with, a kind of a geographical metaphor for our internal relationships with ourselves and what we do and so on. Of course, I'll let you introduce it better. And it is called The Village. So you have published a series of articles on it that can also be heard as a podcast. And I absolutely loved it and really liked it. And the first question would be, before we get on to describing the village itself, is asking you, what were the developments in your life and your internal developments that have kind of shifted your attention to something? Like, where did you notice a need for that sort of thing to come up in your life and hold on to?
Right. I'll tell you a bit of my stories. I used to work at Twitch. That was my career, my kind of high profile career. I think many people that are in the place where we met on Twitter, roughly speaking, are dropouts. I get a feeling, at least. Maybe I'm just projecting, but I had a very cool career at Twitch in my early 20s, from 22 to 26, 7. And I'm 30 now. And well, that was just great. It was my dream job. I gunned for it with my study choice. I had some friends there. I used to be a StarCraft 2 commentator. And that's why I really fell in love with Twitch and video game broadcasting and the idea of creator economy before it was a word. And yeah, that was really, really fantastic. And was my first career job gig. And as a kid or a young person, it was amazing to get a task and to be good at it. Was just fantastic. I was like, wow, and they're like, wow, you're really good. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I am really good, right? Like, wow, And my job was partnerships manager. So my job was, I always said jokingly, when I was tired of describing my career in orderly terms, I said, I just make friends. That's my job, And I think I was always kind of good at that. And I also educated myself a bit on that through some literature, some books. I really enjoyed reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. The other day, I saw it pop up on the timeline and somebody said, How to Win Friends and Be a Sociopath. No, but for me, the book was great, even though it's a bit old-timey. It helped me understand. It was at a time where I was confused about whether you had to be an asshole. Can I swear here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Fuck, that's great. Whether I had to be an asshole to have some impact with people, because I grew up as one of the nice guys, nice kids, soft men, whatever you want to call it. And so that helped me a lot to get a sense of, hey, you can just be really awesome and nice to people and that will work. And I was like, well, great, I have that in me. And then I went to Twitch, and it was my job to, acquire content creators for the platform. I was just really nice and to everybody, but I was also firm. I was a bit like a mayor in that particular village, and kept order as well. So I discovered a bit of firmness in me as well. So that's that story in short. And I had my dream job for my age. I was feeling very well compensated monetarily, and I was like, well, that's great, isn't it? And then a little voice rose up in me, and it's like, well, but is it? And I said, yes, isn't it? And then the voice said, well, what's your life like? I said, well, I'm in London. The voice was like, how do you like that? I'm like, not very much, to be honest. Where would you rather be? Berlin, maybe, or closer to my family? It was just this internal dialogue cropping up. It's like, how do you spend your day? In an office most of the time? Can you spend it elsewhere? Yeah, if I'm traveling for work, and this dialogue just was like, well, things aren't that great. And then the part of me that manages the money was like, but guys, what are you doing? we have everything here. And then all the other people were like, well, money man, how about you be quiet for a moment, and we'll just take all the money that we made and take a little sabbatical and see how that goes. And so I went into 2019, basically. At the end of 18, I quit Twitch. I steered the ship into a safe harbor, hired some people because I was alone in that position for a way too long time. Hired some people there, so it was stable, right? And then I took off. And from then on, I ran the experiment of, the meme, like, well, how do you... What would you do if you had all the money in the world?
Right.
Now, right. That's a question that people ask on inspiring street interviews. Kind of thing. And I was like, well, let me actually try that, because I have more money than I could ever think I'd have. Let me just spend that on time for a while. Okay. And that's basically how I got here. That was 2019. So I've been in that space for about 3 years now. And I've just been thinking a lot about life, work, values, priorities, philosophies, what's important to me, what's the essence of my being, what's the purpose of my being, and so on and so forth. And took many roads, and that's roughly the answer, I think, to how did you come up with the village? Because I've always been trying to come up with systems by which I can live my life for that year. And that was what I came up with at the end of last year.
I'm anxious to get to talking about, or excited to get to talking about the village, but because this life trajectory, there are certain similarities and dissimilarities between us, but it's almost uncanny how we have both ended up in this kind of liminal space of exploration and probing around when there are no answers and no charted path to follow. And I'm very much the same way. So listeners of the podcast might know my story by now, but basically being a tour guide, also a well-respected, high-paying job until COVID hits. And then it just throws me into this spin. And I decided to take it with stride and take it in stride and follow my heart rather than follow like any unskilled job for just paying the bills and being there. So before we jump into the village, I just, as two people in an uncannily similar situation on at least one level, the money man thing, that is to me has been such an interesting experience. It took me over a year to really silence this very strong voice that tells me to heed the money man and the concept of money and get to terms with that. And I'm wondering if you noticed something similar, if it has subsided, in fact, with time, And have you gotten to a point where you were telling yourself and your friends around you that we need to abolish the concept of money at all? Because that's how I kind of ended up right before I started making money again, which is very recent and it's still the beginnings, but I can tell that it's coming back. And then it's also very interesting how it kind of spun me in the other way. So just out of curiosity, what has that been like for you?
Sure. So I would say, I definitely have not gotten to a point where I said abolish money or something. You know, I live in Berlin, and I have some of the occupied houses right around the corner who preach anarchism and anti-capitalism and whatnot. And I was never into that. I just felt it was a pretty easy and not very smart cop-out. Because I like that game, I think. I think it's possible to. I'm feeling a bit careful here, because, but I'll still say what I think. I might be wrong, of course, but I feel like it's relatively possible to, you know, kind of choose your expenses to a degree, and then to kind of choose what you want to do. Either you're talented or you work hard. I think there are probably some doors that are not open to some people in like harsh ways of intellectual like non-capabilities or something, which I couldn't I couldn't relate to at all. No, like and I just want to say that because that might be a blind spot. So no, I was never into that, dude. But there is a thing, of course, where you're thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't measure everything by money. I think so. One of my philosophies that I've been thinking about is size of life, and that's also going to be like the last Inter-Intellect Salon in the series. It's going to be at the end of April of living well and thinking big. And there, I think it's good to choose your size, and your size can be described in a way pretty well by money, like the size of your life, the expanse, so to speak. So I always felt around that choosing is pretty possible. And we can get deeper into that if you want to. And what happened to me and my relationship with the money man inside of me is I definitely wanted to challenge him. I wanted to say, well, it was a good time when the curve went up, the net worth. And then let's see, let's go down. Let's see what happens, right? Controlled. Let's go down controlledly. How is that? And I can tell you that I never really quieted the voice. I have quieter and louder periods. Sometimes the money man sits quietly in his cell in the basement where I locked him. And sometimes he rattles his chains and is like, let me out. And so he's definitely big, and it's not easy to contain him. And I'm slowly he's out now. I need to, it's important to me to be able to live freely, and money for me is a part of that, and also to provide. You know, I'm not a consumerist. Like, I don't buy shoes all the time and stuff like that. I buy like nice tools, and I buy nice food, and I want to give money to somebody who needs it, who's close to me. And yeah, so it's time now. But it was good to lock him away for a while. You know what I mean? Yeah. How was it for you?
That's such a good way of putting it. Him rattling his chains. I love it. I love the metaphor. For me, well, the interesting thing for me about it is that, you know, as soon as I was able to, and it wasn't about me like silencing him, right? Like shooting him in the head and chucking him in the river. It was never
part
about
of your team. He's your friend too, right?
Exactly. But it is interesting that, you know, for those times when the money man is shouting at you, it's really hard to create anything very good artistically. Like it is interesting that in my experience, it is really, it can destroy the quality of your work. It can contaminate your flow, even if because you think about what you do in terms of popularity, because we know that usually popularity equals income when it comes to creative pursuits. But popularity, of course, tends to come to things that are oversimplified, that are maybe kind of either very rare and almost it's just kind of luck how things become popular sometimes, being in the right place at the right time. And then some things can be popular because they ride on that wave, and that goes away very quickly if you're just being a copycat of something else that's going for now. So that was just a really interesting link for me, seeing that it was very freeing artistically not to have the money man shouting at me. And I'm just really interested to see if it will somehow connect to other things that are going to come up now in our conversation about the village. So, in terms of the village, do you know how to say where the seed was sown? The first, let's say, the seed in the garden, or how did you come upon the lush area where in your mind you started envisioning a village developing around?
Well phrased, my friend. Well phrased. Okay, let's see. So last year was a big one for me, man. 21. I had a change in life at the beginning of the year. Basically break up, moved back into my own apartment. That's that. And then I was like, okay, right, that didn't work. That sucked. Let's make it count. I enjoyed so much being with myself again. And it was this real important thing now to enter into a very meaningful relationship with myself. Sounds a bit cliche maybe, so maybe worth a bit of explanation. Okay, what we said about the money man also, it's a matter of priorities. And for some reason, for me, it was always easier to prioritize others than to prioritize me. I think many people feel that way. Childhood, blah, blah, blah. We can get into that. I have had this in relationships often. And in a way, I've also had it with my job. So it was a matter of priority. The last thing you said about the money man is like, well, you have to, in your inner hierarchy, or maybe you want to, put like quality and the artist and higher than the money man. And the money man or money woman or money whatever who you're into,
money demon,
or money butler, because he I'll keep to the he needs to be serving you, right? It's a great service. He says, don't you want to generate some income? That would be nice. Well, yes, you are actually right. And then it's like he should ask the higher up, which is the creative, is like, hey, what do you want to do? I want you to generate some money with that. What's that, right? And that dialogue should be like that. If the money man runs the system gets corrupt. We know this from most parts of the world, and that's maybe my critique on money, is like, put him one level down, put him below substance, quality, and maybe even beauty. And then, and then let's talk about the money. And then, okay, so that was the space I was in, where I did the same with my relationship. It was like, with me, basically, it's like, well, it's one more time, another year. Let's really focus on what's important to you now and what you want to do. And I really became quite celibate and by myself and undistracted. And money money and women, in my case, being a man interested in women, are not so different. There's like they both have a very seductive element, and it's easy to run after them, and to like throw your life away for a good money opportunity or for a good woman opportunity. That happens to many people. I feel like I would want to say that wouldn't happen to me, but I would say it definitely did. And okay, and so I would say this kind of centeredness, steadiness, firmness, like the trunk of a tree, that's something I was cultivating last year for sure. And I was reading a lot of Twitter, and I was enjoying a lot of the farmer types that were cropping up in my timeline. Had interesting takes on life. I've always been interested in sovereignty, and it's just some great romanticism that comes with it. I've also gone into my ancestry a bit. I'm originally, my forefathers on my mom's side are Transylvanian Saxons, and they're basically an emigrated folk of German types that lived in Romania, and they were farming and schooling there. They were, a kind of a independent. They were huge folk, but they were never a part of the area. So kind of the home, the village, the community, also the church, that was all very important to them. And so that's what's been going through my head last year, resonating with this content I've been seeing with all the farmer types, with the sovereign types, with the living some backwater types, happy, eating their own chicken's eggs, and I'm like, that's
the
nice,
chop wood, carry water philosophy of life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And definitely, I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in a village, but not like that. But now I kind of romanticize it. And when it was time to plan, as I write in the part 1, my year 2022, and my friend Sebastian, who's part of my crew, who's a great music producer and musician. We used to play in a band together. We're metal boys. He did like his bit, I was there with him, and he was like figuring out his system, Google Doc, blah, blah. And then I was like, okay, my turn. And then it just dropped on the floor in front of me. I haven't really seen that before, but it was just time to write or to come up with the system. And this metaphor, it just appeared. That's what I came up with. So, and that was the context for that.
Yeah. That's a great origin story. And, so much is, I don't want to open a can of worms, so to speak, here by opening a whole new topic, but I see how the whole notion of hedonism is creeping in from different angles, because, if anything is, if you can abstract anything from pleasures of the flesh and pleasures of whatever money can buy and other, it's pleasure, basically, right? And living life according to whatever pleasures are out there that you can chase, that's hedonism. And also looking back at the chop wood, carry water lifestyle of villagers around the world is almost, as the way I see it, is almost also a bit romantic, because it touches on asceticism and periods of needing less, right? And retreating a bit from this life that wants you to keep expanding and taking up more space. Also, if we look at it from the money perspective, right? It needs less and so on. So that could be a topic for a whole other podcast. And also, I just want to say that one of my grandparents came from Satu Mare in Transylvania, and his last name was Spiegel. So apparently we also share ancestry. So.
That's cool, dude. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm always excited about that. I also saw scrolling through your episodes that you had Patricia on, Budakash, who I'm meeting later this week in Berlin. So that's exciting, man. There's a whole... Yeah, I'm always into the Romania connection now.
There you go.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a reason why we end up in this similar space and thought space. But going forward with the village. I'd really like you to kind of start taking us through the how it was built in your mind. Where is the cornerstone of that? What is the first function that you kind of thought about when approaching this whole idea in the village? Or, you know what, if you don't mind, before that, can we make explicit kind of the framework behind it? Like the village is maybe within a person. Am I right? Is it an internal village of some sort?
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm just kind of looking through my notes at the same time. I think the first question I couldn't even answer, really, like the cornerstones. But let me see. I have two things open here. So one is something that other people can read that's on my Substack, now simon.substack.com, The Village Part 1. There's Part 1, 2, and 3. And that outlines the whole thing. The other one is my own notes from that day, right, where I wrote it down with Sebastian. Maybe I can answer the first question, but let's start with the outline. So the village is made. The village is a symbol of a cyclical, sustainable, and peaceful existence for my own life. That's what I wrote down. And it's made from some components. So the components I have here are the man, the house, the garden, the field, the shop, and the well. And basically, how these things relate with each other, you can probably see in front of your inner eye. The man lives in the house has a garden, and the house also has a field. Maybe the field is detached from the house, maybe not. Depending on you. And then there's so that's of course the estate, so to speak. And then there's the shop that's maybe like street level on the house, let's say, or maybe it's in the village center, depending on the village. And then of course in the middle of the estate, there is the well. And so all of these 6 components serve as ways to interact with the world, or ways to kind of divide your activity, different types of activity, to live cyclical and in a balanced manner. And then also what this serves as for me is because my actual life, non-metaphorically, as far as I know, maybe I'm in a pod and we're living in the Matrix, but let's assume we're here, is here in my flat that you can see. And I have started to build interfaces in my flat, like certain areas to work and play. And I can kind of map them to these different areas of the village. And so there is a very concrete approach here. And I'll talk in a second about what type of works these things represent. There's a very concrete approach here to actually say, I'm sitting down now for some field work, or now I'm doing some gardening work, or you could, put up your Google Calendar in different colors and say, well, that's field work, that's gardening, that's that. And so my goal was to be able to discern between my own work. And just to quickly explain what the different things mean to me in short, we can go deeper.
Yeah.
The man is roughly me. And of course, and this whole thing, one more note, is anybody should be able to make their own version of this. I had an inter-intellect salon on this, and one person described something completely different. She had a cave, and there was a boat, and it was at the beach, but it was all there, right? So I'm as we go through this, I encourage you, Eyal, and also all the listeners to think along with the village, but then also think how that doesn't fit them. Because this is my shit. This might fit some people, but I don't have this as this is great, it works. This idea is great, it works. Right. So I'm the man. And I always ask myself when I wrote this down, is that component okay? Is it in a good state, right? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And this has something to do with, health and fitness and my body and my mind. And the man was okay at the time, so that's good. And then there's the house. And I kind of defined the house as eating, sleeping, and sanitation as very basic activities. But then, of course, everything starts with the house. Everything starts with the home, as you know. And so the house is way more. But the base function of a house is protection, right? From the weather, eating, sleeping, and then also sanitation. And so not everybody's got these things down, right? So it's worth going with the minimum. And then, of course, in my real life, all the other interfaces, I don't have a field, I don't have a garden, I have a balcony with some tomatoes, but that's it, are in here, right? So it's in the metaphor, it's separate. In real life, not so much. Then we have the garden, and the garden contains a type of work and play that where I do what I like, where the man does what he likes. He moves, he plays, and cultivates, with his friends, but also shielded from the public. So I can be naked in the garden if I want to, and my friends agree. I can also be naked in my work. I can be trying stupid things, not.
Right. It's basically private and protected in the sense that you can build something out there and choose not to display it or not have peering eyes judging you for what you've done.
Judgment, exactly. Tryout space for sure. And that's what I've been doing a lot last year. A lot of gardening, a lot of playing around, a lot of deciding projects. And then, of course, they might go. And of course, the defining factor here is then the shop, because the shop is the interface to the world where it has a till. People come in and they're like, well, that is nice. Can I have that? And then you have a monetary exchange, or maybe another exchange, a trade. And but you can choose to put that on display. Not so with the field as far as my definition goes. So there's the field. And my big realization when I came up with this last year was the field. And I was like, I'm missing field work. I've been playing all the time, which is part of my kind of, what would I do with all that money? Well, I kind of allowed my inner child this playing and exploration and creative phase that it was missing.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And it's very thankful. It's a lot calmer now. I have to, do a lot less appeasement with, whatever sweets and other substances that it was interested in, right? It's like this inner peace that also makes the man okay, because the child is not acting up. But I was missing the field work, and the field work is, well, I wrote down every day the man goes to the field to do his work. Every day the man goes to the field to do his work. The field is vast, a large space for, a great space for large scale cultivation. Yeah. And so I've been feeling this, and that's a bit the money man as well. I've been feeling this drag of like, I'm not putting my horsepower to the street or to the plow, let's say in this case. Yeah. Like I wanted to see what happens if I don't have to work. And what happened was beautiful because I realized that I need to work innately. Yeah. I have work in me that wants to come out. That's my creative force. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's part in the garden. But then there's also this bit in the field where I just want to go and toil a bit, to at the end of the day be empty and worked out. And then the other thing with the field is that it's there, that what I want to grow there and plant there is not necessarily for me. The garden is for me, for my joy and for my friends and whatnot. But on the field, I'm thinking like customer centric, right? What do the people want? Mm-hmm. Also. And so that brings the field and the shop into a close relationship, because I want to till the field and work on the field in order to bring that material to the shop and then bring it to the people. And so I want to plant stuff that the people want. So there's a bit of the popularity built in. But again, I've done the gardening before. So a lot of my time is like slotted away into gardening.
Right.
So that's the danger with the money, man. It's like, well, then you just work and toil on the field for 12 hours. It's like, no, I've in higher order, I kind of have my friends in gardening to make sure that I don't fall into that. Maybe that will be a negotiation. Maybe I'll have to go to the field a bit more and so on. But so now you can see that there is a bit of a negotiation there. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that more deeply. But lastly, the well. And when I first wrote this down, I didn't have the well. And then I talked to my good friend Louis, who I'm having a project with called Spiritual Mischief, which is a podcast. And we're also hosting the Season Salon today. So we're working on some spiritual and philosophical topics. And I showed him this and he's like, so where do you get your energy from? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, there's something missing here. I'm like, what do you mean? And and this conversation is on my YouTube, actually, because I thought it would be funny to just upload that. And so he told me about the well. He said, you need the well, which is goes deep into the ground from where you
rejuvenate yourself.
Exactly, where you rejuvenate yourself, where you drink from the source, from the juice, from the spirit, from your innermost, which then makes sure that everything you create is actually tied to you and not some outside in worldly popularity based thing.
Mm-hmm. Some dogma. There's some dogma that was injected to you almost, unwillingly.
Which is a great curse upon the world, that so many people do what other people or social media platforms or whatnot tell them, right? It's nobody is safe from that. And to just shield yourself from that by unsubscribing from everything and not following anybody and blah, blah, it doesn't work. It's all there. So the only way to counteract that is to strengthen yourself from the inside. And that's right. Of course
we have to install a filter that knows how to sift through these things and find what is nutritious and keep out what's not. And keeping in mind as well that because of the nature of tradition, it's not that these things that are these dogmas have not been very useful and necessary at certain times, but they might not fit this time and age. So, yeah, this is fantastic. This is so wholesome. And the only frustrating thing is about every 2 sentences, I just keep thinking of things that could be whole conversations between us, which I hope we will have one day.
We can always talk more. And I want that. I'm happy that you say that, because I, of course, want to bring up some interesting stuff. We can always go deep. This is a deep dive, baby. Wherever you want to go. But maybe for me, a quick finishing touch on this.
Of course.
So that's the village. And I also wanted to say that, that's just one estate. What's up with the village? And then, first of all, the village just sounded nicer. And then I of course, want many, the core thought is that I want to be with people, That's also hasn't always been easy to find the like minds, you know. It seems like we're getting a bit closer here, but so that's why it's called the village, because let's make many components of this where people have their houses, their fields, their caves, their ships, I don't care, but let's, you know, because at the end of the day, we need the shop is the interesting thing. And that's actually what I think is great about money and commerce, because it's such a legit way of bringing people together. It's like, I like what you have. Can I have that? Yes, give me something so I can get what I want to have from somewhere else. Let's trade, right? That's trade. That's part of nature also. So that's why I'm cool with the shop in this. And that's the outline, man. That's the village.
Yeah. So I absolutely love it. And I know I wanted to speak to you about that part, because I know that in your conversation with Louis on the podcast that exposes the world to this concept, you were kind of being apologetic, not in the sense that you were really saying sorry about it, but you had this mini conflict about, you know, calling it the village. Why is it a village? It sounds more like an estate, like I think. But it was important for me to point out that, you know, there's absolutely nothing hindering from you from sharing that house, that field, any of these things with other people. So in fact, it might be...
That's the whole point, bro. Like, why would I do anything?
Right.
I want to do it for the others. We're talking here for whom? For others,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So I think a village is a perfectly good analogy. And, you know, even a shop could be the shop of a co-op working together. So it's co-creation. It's all that. It's definitely not an individualistic endeavor, any of that. And yeah, like I said, there are so many ways for me to take it, but I just want to make it maybe more explicit and drive the point home that I really like what is at the base of it, the search for a good life, which is, you know, is simple, but all these things that you have come up with, I like the fact that they are as simple as they can be and abstract and can be changed in each configuration as we imagine it. But it's very compact. You didn't add up a lot of things that you know, in the end, for each and every one, there are going to be things which they think about that are not in this framework, but go deeper for them, which is really what to plant in the field, what exactly I'm playing with in the garden, and so on. And I just really liked it because we know some techniques and some frameworks that divide up the soul into faculties, so to speak. In the case of, let's say, what appears in Plato's Republic, where the tripartite soul is made of reason, emotion, and desire. We know that framework. We know the framework of internal family systems, where different parts of us are different people. But I couldn't think before I came up on your thing. So take it as the best compliment that I'm putting you in the same line as Plato and
I see it coming. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. And whoever came up with IFS, sorry person, but I don't know your name. But to come up with this more geographical metaphor for spaces where we're actually taking this soul and employing it on different things, and how we relate that to doing well, and also the inherent understanding that there needs to be cyclicality, because I think for me this suggests sustainability, right? Basically, living well for me is enjoying mental health on the biggest kind of pattern that spans as much of our life as we can. Because if you want to say, I'm going to have a good life, then you need to have a pattern to judge by, that you can feel in yourself, that has, in fact, pervaded as much of your life as you could. And that, to me, is mental health. And I think health in the soul, just like it is in the body, is not a static thing. You know, our body constantly ramps up production of insulin after a meal and then takes it down. It ramps up the production of some hormones, then takes it down, and so on. And health is not about a static thing. It's not about the moment where you feel most powerful because your muscles are ready to perform some physical task, right? If you were in that position all the time, well, that would be unhealthy after a while. So there needs to be seasonality, cyclicality, and I really like how you take that from the natural way things work. And another idea that I think you appreciate is something that I learned from my ancient Greek teacher, and that comes up in Plato's Republic, which is really interesting to me, and that is the origin of the word paradigm. So paradigm comes from Greek paradigma, and paradigma is the para part. Para, we know, is something to the side, and degma itself is an example. And where does that show? In the shop of a potter, there would be examples of things that people can come and purchase. And these are the final products, the polished products, the ornamented pots and so on. But each potter would have in their workshop, they would have paradigmata in Greek, the plural. And these are the pots that are not ornamented. They are just as abstract as you can make them without keeping them in your head. So I really like the whole idea of the village is very much a paradigm because it's minimalist in nature. You've picked as few things as you could, I think, that makes sense. You've painted them in very mellow colors and not too much color. And then it's totally customizable as it's presented to, so-called clients, which are the listeners of this podcast and of the series you wrote, people who hear about it, that they can then really bring it to life in their own style with the kind of art that they know to dress it in, right? Whether they're going to choose the colors and so on, a lot of the details. And it was important for you to make that connection between what you've been doing here now, doing this podcast, just to reinforce that and say, right now you are at the storefront, speaking with customers and presenting this model that you basically are happy to let people take into their homes and make their own as they really dress it up in more color and detail. And it was just a nice thought that came to me that I thought you'd appreciate.
I do appreciate it. It's very, also very wholesome. It's, it makes me smile big time. And it's, as you might know, I'm not much into the isms, but I've always, for years now, liked to be universal in my work, universal and timeless. So, for example, when I had a band and we wrote lyrics, I was like, there must not be any like items in the lyrics or something that could tie us to the time, right? Mm-hmm. All the words, we're not talking about smartphones or something,
Yeah.
Not that many metal lyrics are about smartphones, but I like abstract. I like to look at things from a bit of a distance, for better and for worse, but that's what I'm trying to bring, and you described it very beautifully. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And that just mirrored that back to me, that's what I'm trying to do. Not in the least because I'm a very changey guy. If I want to stick to a paradigm, it better be leaving me very much space to do stupid, different things, you know? And I've tried this so much because I've tried so much in my life to have routine or have recurring behavioral patterns. And it's never really worked because most people who teach routines and such tend to be a bit too in the detail for my taste. And for some people, that's great. And in a way, I admire them, who can just say, well, this guy on the internet said I should do 20 push-ups and 40 squats, so I'll just do that.
Right.
I cannot do that. I'm a fucking... and so far, I'm a little revolutionary punk guy, you know.
Yeah.
Fuck you. I won't do what you tell me. I just this applies to myself, unfortunately. So if I try to tell myself something, yeah, you should do that. I've also banned "should" from my vocabulary a long time ago. Before I saw that on the internet, that type of discourse, I won't do it. I just won't do it. And this for me is like exactly like you described it. It's like, you know, this is the village, but make up your own. And this applies to me as well. It's like, I haven't looked at this much, but ever since I came up with it, I lived a bit better, you know? And like you said, the colors are mellow. The thing is very much close to the ground, very universal, not very much in detail. It's just like broad strokes and fill in the rest. And that applies to everybody who wants to mess with this, and also myself. So I guess that's why I'm trying to keep things universal in my stories and my writing, because I love it when people can relate to it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if to extend the paradigm and the Dagmar metaphor, you know, working at Twitch, something like that is very much. We have an innate, you know, as young people, as children, even, we have an innate tendency to just copy what we see, right? And in that sense, you were keen to rise to the top of society, and you know, if you understood what people are looking up to and are admiring, and it's only natural that you would try to rise to the top of that and adopt that and be considered a good member of society through that. So in a sense, you've been shown a lot of these a lot of the parts that are already considered very beautiful, the best that were made. And in that sense, you did what you had until you were kind of handed one of these amazingly fine parts. And they are very, very finely ornamented and all that. They are. But
are valuable.
But they are valuable, and they are a work of art. It is. You've exerted your soul to do that and get to that point, and it's all true. But it wasn't one example based on a paradigm that you came up with. And you know, every paradigm has its origin really in what is up one level even, which is creativity in the human mind and what it can come up with, right? Because it shows up as an apparition in the mind. Wow, I can imagine this kind of part. And then you set out to have a paradigm, and then you paint it with and you ornament it. And I think this is a universal calling. Or I don't know if it's universal. I'd like to think that it's universal, but certainly some people definitely cannot shut out this voice that tells them, you know, do the thing that popped in your head, and also check the capabilities of what you're able to imagine, and don't just trust the imagination of other people that have handed out complete works that are already have been created by someone else. And I think it's a really beautiful process, because if anything, in those 2 years or 3 years that you have been on this journey, it shows that in fact what has happened is that, you know, all this playing around in your mind, in your imagination has has given enough place for a paradigm to show up. And then for your own self, the fact that you live in a space that is actually implementing this paradigm and you're matching it onto your flat. Of course, it's not a village, it's a flat. But the fact that you have designated for yourself a well, a field, a shop, a garden, that shows that you're implementing it and also are not stuck in the stage of just being theoretical, which is super, super important for living well, right? Because that's one step further than thinking well, which is a prerequisite, but it's not the end product.
Yeah. So I would even, that last bit is really important, that living comes first. That's what I always realized now, that you can't, like, I used to listen to and read a lot of Tim Ferriss, who's like, has this hacker reputation. And Tim Ferriss is a great dude. I really appreciate him for a lot of the things he's done, and definitely made my life a lot better. Great podcaster, interviewer, fantastic. And also very kind of like, is one of those types that presents this, we'll just do this, but to be fair, he probably tried it out and it worked for him. So, but it's hard for young people or who are just trying to change their life, people, to make that differentiation. And so you pick up a foreign routine or something, and you're like, wow, I'm so bad at this because I do this for 3 days and then I just stop and I drop it all. And well, I'm just bad at following routines, right? And that's obviously, well, not so obviously, unfortunately, not the case. So I want to make a quick case for this, that this village came inside out. That's what Louis and I always say. That's what you just described. We call that inside out versus outside in. And so inside out are the things that emerge naturally, where you like just kind of tense up this area in which things can happen. And then you just wait and you just let things happen and they start to emerge. You drop the seed and you see what grows. But you cannot tell a seed what it should grow if you don't know the seed. And most of us don't know ourselves. And so we can't say, hey, just do this as your morning routine or do this to get your work done or structure your stuff like this. No. You have to live first and then identify and name second. So one of my pledges to myself for this year was also something that I called, wait for it, no naming convention. And that's what I called it. But I have this tendency to be like, oh, let's structure everything ahead of time. And then we'll, how should we name this podcast episode or what's that? I like that, but it doesn't work. And we want to do what works. So what we need to do, what I need to do is live first and then in retrospect, order it, name it, sort it. And so when it comes to the village, most of it was already living through me. I realized that I had different types of work, garden work and field work, and that I had been focusing on the garden and that the field was calling me. I realized that I had the man who needs certain things. I know myself in that way quite well. I realized how to interact with my house to build up things. So, and then from that, and then I had a sense that I need to have a community, and that would be something like a village. And so, and that's where that whole thing came from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's very clear that your attempt is at universalizing rather than didactically passing on the the truth of how it's really on the ground for you, because and I agree, like Tim Ferriss, first of all, I appreciate very much as a podcaster. How could I not? But there's definitely a tendency in his early work to give all these life hacks, which is really unbearable to me on some level. Because like you say, if I, we've been talking for about an hour now, and you're kind of peppering this conversation with things you like doing, thinking about things with friends, playing music, all that. And, not at any point have you said, well, if you want to be in the garden, well, you need instruments or whatever, and it needs to be heavy metal music or anything like that. These are kind of the idiosyncratic things that you want people to find for themselves. And I think that Tim Ferriss is recognizing it with years, and I do appreciate all of his experimentation. But if anybody's listening, yes, you should definitely take a lesson from Tim Ferriss about how important experimentation is. Less so much about what happened to work for Tim Ferriss, right? Because your name might be Fim Terrace or something like that. So that is such a good point, and it also very much sits well with those different layers that we charted out of the example of the paradigm and of what is in the imagination. And it's definitely showing me how important it is to create that space of, apparently it's somewhere around 2 years for us. Could it be universalized? No, but for us, the 2 years plus that we've been brewing these ideas until something comes out. So now this is something interesting, like an interesting direction to take this conversation is, and it relates to the money man too. What could we do to encourage people and empower them and allow them in terms of circumstances to actually take the time to have things brew in their imagination until it becomes first a paradigm and then finally an example for them?
So that's a bit of a difficult question. Let me try to universalize it. No, so, what I did, and I think in a way what you did, is work, have money saved, take time. Right? Is that about right?
Yep.
Yeah. Same for me. So for young people, I think maybe like 2-3 options. Like one is, work at your maximum capacity. I think it's one of the best.
Hang on, Simon. No, wait. I have to retract what I said. First of all, right after my army service, I went into a forest to an off-the-grid homestead. So I went and did that even before I made any sort of money working. I went and explored the possibility of living in this exactly type of village, chop wood, carry water type of way. So just solar panels, and that's it, not into the network. So just with that in mind, because it seems to be an important biographical detail. But It's interesting that I then moved on to the whole rat race thing, only to be almost unwillingly kind of washed out from it because of COVID, but embracing it, reconnecting everything, synthesizing, and continuing on a healthier path. So with that in mind, sorry, go on.
No, let me ask you, what made you go from off-the-grid homestead to working?
Yeah, great question. So I think, in the first place, what made me go homesteading in the first place, I think it was I had I was very much inspired by Hermann Hesse books, coming of age books. Yeah, Siddhartha. And,
these books.
Oh my God, they might mess with you. Yes. And Narcissus and Goldmund is another one.
Banger. For me,
it
it's
is
the absolute banger. I read it and I lost my mind. I didn't know up and down. Well, I knew up and down much better, actually.
That's right. That's right. So, this type of life, like the asceticism, I definitely was a big part of it. Got there, lost probably 15 kilos, like ate very little and just worked on that and did with the community and a little bit of food, but really not any sort of chasing of the pleasures. And I understand the motivation behind that and the taking a step back and into mainstream society, I think was just for a number of reasons, but ultimately because I did not beat it out of myself. It's not just doing the asceticism by itself did not make these very powerful voices go away, because they have been reverberating in my mind for all the years I've been alive. I grew up in a mainstream place where work is very important. Being of good standing socially is very important. You don't want to be destitute. You don't want to be all those things. And that basically pushed me into trying kind of, eating the cake and living it whole, right? Wanting to succeed in both these things because I was too young to integrate it and really think of what success means to me. I had the idea of success as, in your case, being the Twitch guy, but having some identity of somebody who's in good standing in society as we know it. And I had what I thought was originally my own idea of success, of this counterculture figure of a Siddhartha who goes in the woods. Of course, a counterculture is a culture. And in a sense, I was too young to really come up with my own idea. And I was following ideas of people who very much took the opposite idea of what is prevalent. And so I was really having this inner, this infighting between these two extremes. And I felt a strong urge, I guess, to fulfill both of them before I could settle on something that is neither of those and that actually fits my size.
Yeah. And I think there you have it mostly. And in my words, I would say, listen very well to the voice you hear by the well. That's the first step. Whatever you do, wherever you are, cultivate the practice to really listen to yourself, because that can show you what's wrong with your current situation. And I think what you described and how I lived as well was calibratory behavior. Because I grew up not poor, not broke, but not free. And I mean, children just aren't free, so that's really nothing special.
Right.
And I got the job that I wanted, but that was already related to my inner voice. I just wanted that. I didn't know that half a year or not even half a year into my engagement with Twitch, Amazon would come and swoop it up and get me like a crazy stock package that would fucking 8x in value. That's what happened to me. I was very lucky. But so as far as I, can thank something higher than me, I do that. And as far as I attribute it to me, I would say, well, I went to where I wanted. I went to where my inner voice told me to go, which again is kind of, the inner voice is kind of the higher voice. So, what did I really do? I don't know. But try to not not do something stupid, I suppose. And then now the quiet time is also, but so, okay, but then I made way more in terms of money that I ever like expected. And I had no real use to it because I wasn't really taught, you know, I never went skiing or something. In Germany, people go skiing all the time. I would love to go skiing, but nobody ever showed me, you know, and that's something I could have done with my money. But I have this, maybe that's where my asceticism comes in. I have this kind of, I'm just happy at home, man. I'm just here and I just want to think about my stuff. And I just, all the time, I just want to do like the things that are here and important. And there's definitely something like I could definitely use a partner or something who shows me like more fun things. And it's like, hey, stop working. Let's do something funny. I realized that I'm a bit of a single-minded in that. For
well, universalizing is not going skiing. There's no universalizing in that. So obviously that's not.
No, that's experience, but that's valuable. You know, that's great.
It is.
I really want to answer the question because I know I'm digressing a bit. But what I'm really saying is, if you're young, so two cases, you're young, you're old. The question is, how do we find the time to ruminate and find this thing, you know? Well, I answered it with cultivate your inner voice, which is that already what you want, right? From the ruminating, that making space for that inner. How do you make space for that? When you're young, like just go, if you already have an inner voice, try to do it. Try to follow it as much as you can. If that's really hard and laden with obstacles, work for somebody else as hard as you can. Make yourself very useful. Get paid in accordance. If not, go elsewhere. You know, just move, and save money. That's also a very dumb, frugal tip. It's like save 10%. Those are the old rules. I read this book once, The Millionaire Next Door, and it's about people who are fucking frugal. And it's super boring and again, pretty aesthetic.
Yeah.
But it's still good advice to save 10, like pay yourself. Like people don't do that. They pay themselves in Yeezys. That's dumb. Sorry. Like pay yourself and cash in a separate account. That's good. Then at some point you have some sort of FU money that you can use to chill for a moment. And then you can go back in, or maybe you can chill for a long moment. So that's when you're young, I think. And that's calibration anyway. If you're older and you're like, I'm 50 and I've been just doing what other people told me all my life, which happens to many people. I would say, well, do you have some money lying around? Can you take a break? And then, and if you're like in an important job and people are counting on you, that's the other thing, because I tend to be a bit selfish maybe, and I wouldn't advocate that, because people counting on you in your job, your customers, that's important. If that's something you care about and not something you use as an excuse not to take time for yourself, if you actually care about it and you want to stay in your job or whatever, then I would say you could get a coach. I'm starting to coach some people at the moment, and their problem is they want to make time for themselves and they just can't. They can't even make an hour in a week. And so that's like fitness. It's the same thing. It's very hard if you're not used to that. Mm-hmm. So you can pay somebody some good hard cash, me for example, and they will help you. Like I'm noticing this now with some of my clients. The scheduling itself is part of the work, to just get the hour with me or the two, because they're like, they cancel last moment because they have something better to do. Right. But really they want to work with me so they get to themselves. Isn't that strange? But that's real. So it's not about making 2 years. It's sometimes making an hour a week, or making 10 minutes a week. And then we are at morning routines again or something. So there are many ways to make time, but that's a whole topic. It's like, how do you create time? And that's a whole skill. You have to, and that's prioritizing. Book recommendation is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. A bit boring, but pretty on point with like prioritizing and stuff. So yeah, so maybe does that make sense for the question? I mean,
yeah, it does. I mean, there is. I don't think there is a good answer. Usually, when I get myself into these corners, because they are corners, there are no easy answers to that, and I think that's definitely fair what you came up with. And I always also, in my mind, I'm pushing the idea of education. So never mind society at large, but people listening to this podcast or you and I, for me, it's important to keep in mind education, and sometimes things that are, the way we were raised, we can't take time back. We can't go back in time and make that time as adolescents. But I want people to think of the fact that a lot of the hours that we spend in adolescence, as adolescents in school, turn out to be quite useless, and that thinking about empowering people while they're young, while they're under their parents' wings still financially and in terms of shelter, encourage people to really be there and empower them to come up with original thoughts about what life could be about. And, these thoughts are going to change. They are going to change. I don't think that anybody at 16 figured it out. But the habit of trying to come up with something that's yours originally and applying it and seeing the results is something big. And that's an advice that I give myself as a parent now, to always remember to allow my child to get to that as early as possible, rather than have some crazy wake-up call. You said age 50. For my dad, that was my mother suddenly dying, and that was it took that much of a hit for him that he was like, hey life, like, you're not fair at all. That was not the game. And for him to change course abruptly. I'd like us to wrap up things conceptually. So I want to ask you if there's something that's still on your mind in terms of the village and connecting it to living well. If something is worth mentioning, then I'd love for you to go for it.
Yeah, let's see. The last thing we talked about, I wanted to give a bit of a little bit of a counter push against it also, which is, part of the good life is also wasting time. So one of the wasting time and using time well. And maybe this is a bit on procrastination, because, I'm a gamer historically, and I'm also a procrastinator historically, and or I was, and I'm working on a documentary now called Purpose of Gaming, and we're gonna start releasing some material there, and I've been really thinking about my gaming time and how that has affected me. And those are some of my fondest memories, with my buddies. For example, Sebastian, back in the day, we played GTA San Andreas and Half-Life 2 and Counter-Strike and everything. And, part of the just useless time, like you kind of mentioned, not as a criticism, it's, I know what you mean. And that's what I've been struggling with as an adolescent, as a young adult. It's like, man, you're out here like, playing a whole bunch of video games, but it's just like this gearbox in neutral. It's like,
well, you do realize I was saying that mostly about school, right? Not about the gaming hours after.
Sure, yeah, that might be a fair point. No, so well, let's put this point on its own, not in any argumentative way. Not interested in that anyway. And so I just wanted to mention that I think there's so much value in wasted time, ironically. There's this great bit by David Lynch where he says, please daydream, like don't stop daydreaming. That's where your creativity comes from. And I've also thought about procrastination as the space in which you know that you're not doing the right thing. And so you're maximizing your time. Procrastination is basically, you know, you have to do something and maybe you're sitting on it or not. Either way, it's bothering you because you know you have to do it for something. And then you're like sitting on it, but you can't do it. You can't get yourself to do it. You can do anything but it. And it's like, oh, you know, if you don't understand what it is, it's like, why am I such an idiot? And for me, it's become this, it's a sign that you're not doing the right thing. And I'm not saying that everything that I want to do for myself, I'm doing right away. I have a table right next to me here with a bunch of receipts that I need to, you know, that type of shit. But so I'm procrastinating that a bit, and maybe that's telling me that I need to hire somebody who does that for me or find another way, or, you know, and so procrastinative time is almost like creative time, and a lot of wasted time as a kid in games I daydream also. Like I can play Rocket League, not with my eyes closed, but I can talk to people about everything while I do that. My hands and my eyes just do that. My mental capacity is available. And also there's this gaming thing of heroism and the potential for greatness that most stories deliver, and that games especially let you act out. And that's what purpose of gaming is about. So, yeah, you know, I really, and I think about this sometimes my last 3 years. Talked to a friend yesterday. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to take some time between jobs and I'm just going to do yoga teacher training. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Why? And he's like, yeah, just kind of as an activity. And I'm like, that's cool. And then I was like, I never did this. I had so much money, so much time. Why did I never like do that? And well, I can't really tell you, but I trust that that's okay. Right. Like,
yeah,
like I don't tally up my time now that was wasted. Looking back, I can't remember any time that I would truly consider as wasted, as long as I'm standing here and alive and kicking. The only mistakes I've made are when I've treated people not as well as I could have. But time is, time is worth using well and wisely. But part of using time wisely is wasting.
Yeah, I agree with that so much, with everything you just said. And, you know, I dare not make any claim to add to the canon in terms of now going back to the village and making a suggestion about what. But
please do. It's open source.
No, well, I will say to people, consider putting a hammock in your garden that you can just lie around in, because in the journey that I've been going through, it was definitely interesting for me to understand that some days where you just get up and you just don't have the energy for whatever reason to get and not touch your keyboard or anything that is touched into your field, not even the garden, right? Not even the playful stuff. Sometimes you just don't want to do that.
No.
Well, you're in the hammock, and being able to tell yourself, you know, wholeheartedly, even if I never find the energy again, which is not going to happen, trust me, tomorrow is going to be a new day. But even if I did not find the energy to get up from this hammock again, and I would lie here wasting my time until the end of the life or whatever, you know, even that like extreme idea, nothing wrong with it. Well, if that is really how if this is really how you're going to feel, okay. And then just be at peace with yourself. And trust me, you're going to get up tomorrow with something else on your mind, with some different attitude you picked up, with a different level of energy. And you are going to play in the garden. You are going to play in the field, but do not be, self-flagellating over notions of laziness and stuff like that. And I agree with procrastination as well. You know, so procrastination for me, after examining it in myself for a long time, it just means that it's not time to do it yet. That's it.
That's true. So, that's true. And this is also maybe as a circle closer, what's up with the money man? Because when I've been, that's delegation. I trust the money man now. And so he doesn't need to yell so much anymore. I'm like, hey, man, I think you know your job. And I think when it's truly time, I'm not going to keep you from doing some money things with me, right? So I'm also at your, what do we say? Like, not mercy, not peril.
Well, you're listening. You're listening.
I'm listening. And and so come out, like, don't yell, please. We're all civilized here. You are capable. You've proved it. We are safe. Go ahead and follow your instincts of commerce and trust that it will adequately serve the size of life that you have chosen.
Hey, man. Amen. This has been so lovely and so timely for me. And before we go, last but not least, I'd love for you to share with listeners where your thoughts can be found and anything of the sort. So please go ahead.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you as well. This was very great, very cool. And I appreciate your line of questioning and what you shared with me as well was very, I'm feeling good now.
Of course.
My handle is now Simon because the time is now. So at NOW Simon, pretty much everywhere. Twitter, for example, Instagram, for example, and Substack, for example. So on nowsimon.substack.com, you can find all the articles on the village. I also put them in audio form. And the audio, thanks to Substack's cool features, is also on Spotify now. So, and in the near future, I will do a lot of podcasting also. So I will do the Time Is Now, which is kind of my own project. And then I will also do Spiritual Mischief with my friend Louis. And you can find that at spitmeef.substack.com. So that's SPITMIEF. So that's our project to combine spirituality and comedy and a bit of mischief, of course. Then I'm also working on Purpose of Gaming. And you can find some interviews on my YouTube channel. Just search Purpose of Gaming. But these are the three things that's why I'm a bit wavy with saying them. Don't have my pitch really down yet, but that's what I'm working on bit by bit. And I host some inter-intellect salons. You can just search for my name, Simon Ohler, OHLER. And I've got one on Size of Life, which is the note we ended on at the end of April. I would love to, I've been really enjoying hosting these salons. I would love to welcome you there, Eyal, and also everybody who would like to join us. Talk about Size of Life, maybe the money man, because that's what that's about. So, hey, thank you very much for having me. And I hope I can and will share more articles and thoughts and audio things soon.
Yeah, Simon, thank you so much again. And I can say that I genuinely look forward to hearing, starting looking at all these projects of yours. And, on my part, I'd like to say to many more.